Welcome back, everyone. This is Ayusha, and before we begin, I want to share the lens through which I approach my work. I serve as an emotional mastery mentor and the director of international programs at Soft Skills AHA, an edtech organization in the United States committed to empowering learners worldwide through social emotional learning. My work lives at the intersection of education, emotional growth, and inner transformation. In many ways, it belongs to the healing space, not clinical, but human. It is about helping individuals understand their emotional landscape, cultivate resilience, reconnect with their inner wisdom, and rise into a more conscious, centered version of themselves. That intention guides everything I create, my courses, my content, and the conversations we share here. My insights come from years of immersion in the world of emotional intelligence, a deep curiosity, ongoing research, observing how people think, feel, and behave, and staying attuned to how the science around emotional intelligence, social emotional learning, and human consciousness continues to evolve. But they also come from within, from meditation, self-reflection, and a sincere commitment to understanding how the mind, body, and soul work together to shape the lives we lead. Today, I want to take you into something profoundly transformative: how growth mindset, critical thinking, and emotional intelligence intertwine with the neuroscience of how our brain actually functions. And as always, I'll share my personal reflections along the way so you can see how these ideas influence not only the way we think, but the way we show up in the world. I'd also love to hear from you, so feel free to share your reflections, your insights, or even the questions that surface for you, because this space becomes richer when we learn with each other, not just from each other. So let's begin with the foundation for growth mindset. Now, most of us have heard about it in some form or the other, maybe as a motivational quote on Instagram or a TED Talk snippet. But let me tell you, it is so much deeper than that. The work of Dr. Carol Dweck, a renowned psychologist and professor at Stanford University and author of the best-selling book, Mindset: The New Psychology of Success, teaches us that mindset is about how we interpret struggle, setbacks, and feedback. And more importantly, it's about how our brain responds to these moments and how we can grow through them all. Her groundbreaking research on growth versus fixed mindset has transformed the way educators, leaders, and learners around the world approach learning, effort, and resilience. I remember so clearly how this chapter shaped me. When I won the World Miss University crown back in 2003, people saw the sparkle, the glamour, the celebration. But for me, the real story was everything that happened quietly behind the scenes. It was the late nights when I questioned myself, the moments of doubt before stepping in front of the judges and cameras, and the deep sense of responsibility I carried as I represented my country. I still remember being told that winning would be almost impossible because I wasn't from a Western country. Now, these were the words that could have easily discouraged me. What many people don't know is that I grew up hearing narratives that tried to diminish me. Labels like stupid or abnormal, ideas that never truly belonged to me but still echoed in the background of my childhood. Deep down, I always knew the opposite was true, but when you hear something repeatedly, it lingers. And this moment, standing on an international stage at just 17, became the point where I quietly promised myself that I would no longer carry those old versions of me. I wanted to prove to myself that everything I'd held back for years deserved to finally be seen. So, instead of breaking me, these challenges stirred something powerful inside, an inner strength I didn't even know I had. They didn't make me feel less than. They made me more determined, more awake, more present in every heartbeat of that journey. And I kept reminding myself, all I can do is give my whole heart. Stay true to who I am and let life unfold as it's meant to. One moment stands out forever. Just before the talent round, when I was about to perform a 5-minute classical dance, I felt a sharp cramp in my toe. The music began, and I had to step onto the stage with grace, circling and flowing, every gesture precise, every expression focused. And in that instant, the pain didn't disappear physically, but my focus and sheer determination lifted me beyond it. I danced every step, every movement, with my heart completely in it, without letting a single compromise touch the performance. It wasn't until I stepped off the stage, overwhelmed by applause, that the cramp returned, grounding me in the reality of what I had just done. I sank to the floor, massaging my toe, catching my breath, and then rushing to get ready for the next round, where I had to be in my gown and heels. Even now, I go back to that day and marvel at it. The way our minds, when fully present and fueled by determination, can rise above pain, doubt, and fear. It's a reminder that focus, courage, and heart together can turn even the hardest moments into triumphs that stay with you forever. That shift from chasing the outcome to honoring the journey changed everything. Every day began to feel sacred. I found myself fully present, absorbing each moment as it unfolded, knowing that this was a once-in-a-lifetime experience. I made a quiet promise to myself. Even if I didn't win, I would leave with a heart full of memories, meaningful friendships, and lessons that would stay with me far beyond the stage. And over the years, that awareness only deepened. I kept reminding myself that every day is a once-in-a-lifetime moment, because we truly don't know what tomorrow holds. Slowly, the power of today, this very moment, became impossible to ignore. What unfolded alongside this awareness was the courage to keep discovering who I really am beneath all the old stories and expectations. Authenticity isn't a destination, it's a lifelong unfolding. And every time you choose to return to your true self, listening to your inner voice before the noise around you, something inside you expands. You feel lighter, freer, more grounded in who you were always meant to be. Now, in my late 30s, that realization feels even more profound. Time moves quickly, and when you become conscious of its pace, you begin to treat each moment with intention. You learn to be here, fully, grateful for the gift of life, attuned to the energy moving through you, and aware of your ability to manifest what genuinely aligns with your soul. When you live from that space, life starts to feel nothing short of magical. And in the end, winning the crown wasn't just a victory, it was a message to the 17-year-old version of me who had once been made to feel less than. It reminded her that when you quiet the noise, trust your purpose, and move with intention, you don't simply follow your destiny, you shape it with your own light. And that confidence and willingness to engage fully with challenges became my living example of a growth mindset. And from that day onward, I have continued to nourish this mindset, finding joy in the process rather than the outcome. It guided me through excelling in higher studies, becoming an entrepreneur, discovering my authentic self, and realizing my calling in education and the healing industry. This mindset opened doors internationally. I now serve as the Director of International Programs for Soft Skills and Career Readiness Programs, run my own YouTube channel, conduct global sessions, and I'm contemplating even writing my own book. Focusing on effort over reward transformed my perspective. I now ask myself not what do I do next, but what do I create and contribute now? Let's ground this in a bit of science, because when you understand what your brain is actually doing, everything suddenly feels less personal and far more empowering. There's a study by Jason S. Moser and his colleagues that I absolutely love. They looked at how our brains react the moment we slip up, and the findings are beautiful. People with a growth mindset didn't collapse under the weight of the mistake. Their brains actually lit up. It was as if their mind leaned in and said, "Hold on, there's something here worth learning." But when someone carried a fixed mindset, that same moment often triggered a complete shutdown. Self-doubt, avoidance, that sinking feeling we all know too well. And to me, this reveals something so human and so hopeful. Growth isn't about being perfect. It's about staying open, curious, and compassionate with yourself, especially when things don't go as planned. Moser and his team went further, identifying two key brain responses that explain why this happens. The first is the ERN, an immediate alarm bell that fires the moment you make a mistake, signaling that something went wrong. The second is the PE, a slower, reflective signal that activates when you consciously pay attention to the mistake. Their research showed a striking difference between mindsets. People with a growth mindset have enhanced ERN and PE responses, meaning their brains not only noticed errors, but also actively engage with them as learning opportunities. Individuals with a fixed mindset show blunted ERN and PE responses, indicating that their brains are less attentive to mistakes and more likely to treat them as threats, triggering avoidance, self-doubt, and disengagement. Together, these signals tell a powerful story. Mistakes aren't signals of failure, they're signposts pointing to your learning edge, guiding you to adapt, improve, and grow. And when you look at the neuroscience explained by Dr. Tracy Marks, you can almost see Moser's findings come to life. Dr. Marks, a psychiatrist, describes how the brain is constantly forecasting what should happen next. When reality does not match that prediction, a mismatch occurs, which is called a prediction error, triggering the very same error detection circuitry that Moser's research highlighted. First comes a dip in dopamine, that uncomfortable jolt we often interpret as shame or frustration. But beneath the emotion, the brain is actually signaling, pay attention. Something here needs recalibrating. Where things often go wrong is not in the mistake itself, but in how the emotional brain responds. The amygdala hijacks the moment, drowning out the prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for the deeper, growth-driven reflection that Moses' PE responses depends on. And this is where the magic of practices like mental debugging begins to shine. When you slow down and name your expectations, examine what actually happened, and identify the belief that needs adjusting, you're essentially activating that second error-related signal. You shift from reacting to engaging with the mistake, keeping the reflective learning system online long enough for real change to take root. This is why Moses' work resonates so strongly with anyone interested in emotional intelligence. It reframes mistakes not as personal failures, but as neurological opportunities. And through narrative reframing, through pausing long enough to interrupt the emotional hijack, through rehearsing new patterns, you transform moments you once avoided into moments that strengthen your cognitive flexibility. You're literally teaching your brain to respond instead of react. So the next time you catch yourself thinking, why do I keep doing this? Remember, your brain isn't working against you. It's giving you a signal, a code, a nudge. And when you learn to decode it with curiosity and structure, you don't just prevent future mistakes, you build the kind of adaptive resilience that makes you wiser after every misstep. Think about a moment when you made a mistake recently. Did you see it as a failure, or did you lean into it, trying to understand what it was trying to teach you? This simple shift in perspective is the bridge between a fixed and growth mindset. Next, I want to bring in David Yeager's work, which takes this a step further with the Trier social stress test. Now, in these experiments, participants are asked to deliver speeches and then solve complex arithmetic problems in front of evaluators and receive immediate feedback on their performance. Researchers measure their stress responses such as heart rate, cortisol levels, which is often known as stress hormone, and their blood flow every step of the way. The fascinating finding is that even a brief 30-minute tutorial teaching students about growth mindset and how stress can enhance performance led to measurable improvements. Let me make this real for you. Imagine you're standing in front of a room full of people, your heart's racing, palms sweaty, and someone tells you that you got the answer wrong. In a fixed mindset, that could feel crushing. But with a growth mindset, informed by Yeager's intervention, you see it differently. You tell yourself, this is information, and I can learn from this because my brain is growing. Now, I've seen this happen firsthand, not in a lab, but in classrooms and training sessions. When people embrace this, stress becomes a signal to focus and expand, not a warning to retreat. Now, a key component of these studies is the contrast between intelligence feedback and effort feedback. In intelligence feedback, participants are praised for innate ability, such as "you're so smart," while in effort feedback, the focus is on strategy, persistence, and learning. I see how hard you worked and the strategies you've used. Now, across studies, intelligence feedback often leads to withdrawal when challenges arise, because failure feels like a judgment of fixed ability, whereas effort feedback reinforces growth. The brain interprets struggle as learning. This distinction is vital in education, leadership, and even self-talk in daily life. So think about your own experience. When someone praised your intelligence versus your effort, which feedback made you more willing to tackle the next challenge? Which shaped your confidence more deeply? Now, another layer of Jaeger's research is about stress as a performance enhancer. Typically, we think of stress as something to avoid, but the experiments show that when participants understand that stress signals preparation, heightened focus, increased energy, mobilization of resources, they actually perform better. Now, it's incredible how simple information can change physiology and psychology. So just 30 minutes of tutorial explaining neuroplasticity, effort, and struggle as signs of growth led to improvements in self-regard, course performance, and willingness to tackle harder challenges long after the intervention. I remember periods in my own life when the pressure felt almost suffocating. Tight deadlines, complex responsibilities pulling me in every direction, the weight of expectations, and the loneliness that came with social isolation. Now, in those moments, my first reaction was stress and even flashes of despair. But over time, I learned to see things differently. I began to reframe stress not as a burden, but as a signal that I was pushing my own boundaries, that I was growing. Slowly, I found ways to channel that energy into focus, creativity, and problem solving. And what once felt overwhelming started to feel like fuel, a force that, when paired with awareness and intention, could propel me forward and help me grow in ways I hadn't even imagined. So, how does this all connect to critical thinking? Critical thinking isn't just logic or reasoning. It's the ability to navigate uncertainty, question assumptions, and analyze evidence without being hijacked by emotion. A growth mindset directly supports this. When students receive effort-based feedback, they learn to evaluate where they went wrong and identify strategies for improvement. Their reasoning becomes reflective rather than defensive. Growth mindset cultivates the mental flexibility that critical thinking requires. And when we bring emotional intelligence into the equation, the picture becomes even richer. Emotional intelligence is about recognizing and managing emotions in oneself and others. A growth mindset, especially one paired with stress as performance-enhancing perspective, strengthens emotional intelligence. You become aware of how stress and feedback affect your body and mind. You regulate emotional responses consciously, and you respond with thoughtfulness instead of reactivity. Now combine that with critical thinking, and you have a powerful synergy. You evaluate situations logically while staying emotionally attuned and resilient. I now invite you to take a moment to think about your own recent challenges. Were they moments where you interpreted stress as a threat or as a signal to focus and grow? Could you approach the next challenge with a mindset that integrates effort, curiosity, and emotional awareness? Let's take a moment to reflect on practical tools you can implement. First, consciously adopt growth mindset language in daily life. Replace "I can't do this" with "I can't do this yet, but I can learn." Second, when you face mistakes, ask yourself, what is this teaching me? Third, consciously track your emotional reactions and see stress as a signal for action rather than a threat. And fourth, actively seek and value effort-based feedback, not just from others, but in your own self-talk. I often share this with the teams I train. In a high-pressure project, we could choose to see tight deadlines and unexpected challenges as obstacles, or as signals that our team is stretching capacity and learning. The difference in energy, creativity, and results is remarkable when growth mindset and emotional intelligence principles are applied consciously. Before we close, I want to tie it all together for you. Growth mindset, critical thinking, and emotional intelligence are not separate silos. They are all interwoven. Critical thinking sharpens the mind. Growth mindset expands the mind. And emotional intelligence ensures the mind and heart are aligned. Together, they create a framework for conscious, adaptive, and empowered living. Every stressful moment, every challenging task, and every feedback, whether it's positive or negative, can be transformed into a stepping stone for growth if approached intentionally. So as you leave this podcast, I want you to reflect on this. Your brain is capable of growth. Your stress is a signal. Your mistakes are lessons. And your emotional responses are your allies when guided by awareness. Embrace this discomfort. Lean into challenge and watch as your confidence, resilience, and insight deepen over time. Thank you for joining me today. Remember, growth is not an endpoint. It's a daily, conscious journey. Please take what resonates, experiment, reflect, and practice. And above all, be compassionate with yourself as you navigate this beautiful journey called life.